Hey folks, it's Patriot Nurse. In today's segment, I want to share with you the top 5 things that every nurse should know. So this video, I'm kind of sharing with you my life experiences as a nurse, but also some of the things that I wish someone would have told me when I first started out as a nurse many a moon ago. I've been a nurse for over a decade now. And boy, have I seen some changes, and most of them are bad, to be honest, with the nursing profession as it is in the general state of medicine, the way it's practiced here in the United States. So the things that I want to share with y'all are applicable not just for nurses, but really any healthcare provider, anyone who works in the modern medical industrial complex. It is what it is, and I want to share them with you. The first is take care of yourself. The second is beware of power tripping. The third is looking at the patient and not the screen. The fourth is never accepting subpar behavior. And the fifth is just saying no to toxic environments and practices. So we're going to go down these, and I want to share with you some of the nuggets and the little tidbits. The first one here is to take care of yourself. And this applies to nurses especially in many different ways, but I've seen, unfortunately, the case studies and the poster children throughout my career of people who didn't follow this. And the most obvious point in this is clearly to get enough sleep, but also to have a good diet and eat well and take care of ourselves activity-wise, and to especially practice proper body mechanics. Your back is your bank account. If you screw up your back because you need to turn this patient and your staffing is not what it needs to be, and you and another person try and turn this 350-pound patient, you're going to pay for it. And unfortunately, a lot of nurses are in a position where they just kind of accept the staffing and, oh, you're going to have to make do. No, I'm not making do. I'm not putting myself and my patient, by the way, in an unsafe situation because y'all can't get your act together and get more people up here to help me. So I'd love to help you clean this patient, and I will be more than happy to help you turn this patient or whatever, but we're going to get appropriate ratios here to turn this patient based on what they weigh and what we can safely handle as nurses. Or as CNAs, by the way. You know, a lot of our CNAs and different techs throughout the nursing world and the patient healthcare world are involved in this. So I'm not just saying this just for nurses here. But we need to be very, very vigilant on our body mechanics and protecting ourselves. And you think about it, this isn't just a selfish thing of, oh, I don't want to hurt my back. No, wait just a minute. Our patient here, especially if you got patients who are in long-term care facilities, it doesn't feel good to be turned. It's uncomfortable to be turned. And when you don't have enough people who are applying equal force on a patient, it hurts. So I'm doing this not just for myself, but also for my patient. The other thing here is a practicality when it comes to taking care of yourself. Don't sleep with your coworkers. Thank God I was never tempted to. But seriously, don't party with your coworkers, don't go drinking with your coworkers, and don't sleep with your coworkers. Because your ability to go and be a professional when you clock in, meaning practice your craft without having the distractions of, hey, this person said that you were with you don't need that drama. You don't need it. You deserve better than that. And your patients deserve better than that. So don't sleep with your coworkers, and don't go partying and drinking with your coworkers and stuff after shift, and definitely before. Don't be doing that, y'all. Unfortunately, I think the reason a lot of this has taken place is because nurses are being forced to work because of the industry trends. 12-hour shifts, on these weird splits where essentially, especially if you work night shift, you have no life and your coworkers are your only social life. But from a best practices and from honestly your own self-interest, just don't party and don't sleep with your coworkers, because they don't need to be privy to all the ins and outs of who you are. And you have to ask yourself, why are you coming across paths with this person? And it's frankly because of a paycheck. In many cases, you wouldn't be interacting with these people after hours, because they don't share your common interests. They may happen to work with you. And I'm not saying don't go to a function or whatever, but don't make a habit of sleeping with your coworkers and partying with coworkers. It's just not a recipe for success. The second thing here is to beware of the power tripping. Okay. So this has changed a lot since I first became a nurse over a decade ago. There is something about the tattletale nature that has been installed on the computing software for nurses within the past decade. It's like they feel in many cases that they are duty-bound to involve the state if there's even a doubt on certain things. And especially when it comes to the labor and delivery world, there has been a trend across the country recently, unfortunately, of getting DCS involved with protective custody if a parent or a set of parents make a decision, an informed decision, by the way, that we don't agree with as healthcare providers. And I think there needs to be a humility on our part of practice. We're not God, and we don't get to dictate to parents what they should do with their child. We are servants. Okay? When you show up and you're caring for somebody, yeah, you may have education. Yeah, you may have practical experience, but it's not your kid, right? It's not your mother. It's not your father. So we need to be very, very cautious of this. Unfortunately, like I said, there's been a trend more and more of these physicians and healthcare providers, advanced healthcare providers, getting the state involved because their egos have been challenged, right? We told parent this. Parent doesn't agree with us. Parent wants to do something different or opt out. Therefore, we involve the state. And you know what? As nurses, that's our job to step in here, because the bottom line here is we are patient advocates. Advocates. We're not patient power of attorney. We don't get to make decisions for them. We are advocates. We stand up for them and their rights, because you know this, as many nurses, especially working post-op, you know that our patients are in a vulnerable position with us. They are vulnerable. They're not at their best. They're not strong in many cases, especially if they're in the hospital. They don't have all their normal faculties. They are vulnerable, and there is a position of power that we have that cannot be abused, okay? We have to be advocates for them. So if you see somebody abusing their power and trying to get the state involved to ruin people's lives or whatever it is, unjustly and unwarrantedly, by the way, we need to be involving ourselves in the situation to advocate for our patients. Okay, I'm not giving legal advice. I'm just saying we can't allow people, regardless of which letters are after their name, who are power tripping to screw up our patients' lives and to separate mom and babe after birth and do some of these toxic things. Oh, no. That's where we step in as nurses. That's where we step in. We're patient advocates. Number 3, look at the patient, not the screen. Okay, y'all. This has been a major shift since I started, so many moons ago. I say this, I feel old, y'all. I know I'm sure I'm not in the grand scheme of things, because there's a lot of y'all out there who have been practicing for multiple decades. But have you not seen, if you've been paying attention, this really, really disturbing trend that when people are care providers are going into patients' rooms because of the electronic medical records, it's like patient's right here and they're like, no, your patient's right there. The computer is not who you're caring for. The patient is right there. Furthermore, like, this is a person. This is a real person in front of you. With real feelings, real thoughts. They're scared. They're not happy to be there in most cases, unless they're like Munchausen or whatever. But they deserve our attention, right? We need to be human beings. Be a mensch, right? Like, be a human being. Put eye contact with them. So, talk to your patient first. Chart later. I miss the days of paper charting, y'all. I'll just say it. I do miss it, and I'm not ashamed to say it. The 4th, never accept subpar behavior. Okay, this goes patient families especially. Don't accept subpar behavior. I'm not going to sit here and have you abuse me. Okay, I'm going to disengage from the situation. You know what? I appreciate that you're really upset right now. I'm going to be back when we have some time here to talk about this appropriately. But I'm not going to stand here and be abused. I've said that. I'm not going to accept subpar behavior from coworkers. That includes belittling remarks, insulting remarks, unnecessary, like, backstabbing, power grabbing sort of stuff. Not gonna tolerate it. Furthermore, I'm not going to accept subpar behavior from management and from people who are in positions of authority over me at the workplace. Okay, and I have, in some cases, had to lay down the law. And I've left jobs very abruptly, by the way, for reasons of questionable morals, definitely questionable patient care ethics. Sorry, y'all, the wind blew and life happened. Like toxic people that try and blow you over. So with toxic people, I literally have left jobs after weeks, and I'm not a quitter. For those of you who've ever worked with me, you know that I'm not a quitter. I'm not just going to give up on things because life got a little bit challenging. But I will not tolerate subpar behavior, and I will not be abused at work by anybody. I don't care what letters are after your name, and I don't care if you're in management or leadership over me. We're going to work as a team, and I'm happy to follow the chain of command here, but I'm not going to be abused, because this is the United States, or if you're watching outside of the United States, hopefully you're watching in the free world. I'm not a slave, I'm not an indentured servant, and I'm not a serf. This is a voluntary contract. And if you break your terms of contract, which includes a respectful dialogue way to interact with people in a positive work environment, that contract's null and void. Bye. See ya. Now, unfortunately, nowadays they're having people sign these multi-year contracts or whatever to work, to pay off student loans. Listen, I would try and not get into debt in the first place, because I don't want to be tied down like that. Because you don't know the situation you could be walking into. You may have a great interview with somebody. They may promise you the moon, and then you get in there 6 weeks later and they're lying to you and they're scheduling you at times that they said they weren't going to. Don't tolerate subpar behavior, y'all. And the fifth one, just say no. Just say no to unsafe and toxic practices and environments, not only for yourself, but for your patients. This has come in recent times in the manifestation of questionable medical practices that have been standardized and have been lauded by a lot of the alphabet soup medical organizations. You, as a nurse and as a healthcare provider, have a responsibility not only to your patients, but to yourself, to understand not only what this procedure is or what this drug is that you're given, but why you're given it. To our best ability, we must be familiar with not only the pros, the cons, but the potential consequences and side effects here of the things that we're giving our patients, procedures that we're doing. Procedures, even if you're not the doctor doing it or you're not the head honcho doing it, if you're participating in that procedure or you're participating in that administration of a medication, to your best ability, you need to understand every argument for and against it. Okay, and this is especially true with vaccines. And I've caught a lot of flack about this over the years, but I'm just going to say this, y'all. When you, as an honest, thinking human being, do your research and come to a conclusion for yourself. Like, don't be depending on these alphabet soup organizations to give you the truth. They're going to give you their official position, which is usually heavily influenced by not only money, but politics. You don't believe me? Look at these boards, okay? And who sits on them and which boards they also sit on. You have a responsibility to not only your patient, but to yourself, because you've got to live with yourself at the end of the day. 10, 20, 30 years later, with participating in the administration of a med or participating in a procedure with a patient who trusts you, who is vulnerable to you, and in many cases is in a form of powerlessness. So if you will become aware that something that is going on is a toxic practice or is a toxic medication, or there are questions with the medication, or you have questions about the way in which this med is being administered, it is your duty, not just to your patient or your profession, like the Florence Nightingale of, it's your duty to yourself, because you have to be able to live with this as a person. You have a duty to raise questions about this in the appropriate chain of command, and if you don't get satisfaction, then you may have to make some decisions as to whether or not you stay in that job. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying at the end of the day, you've got to be able to look yourself in the mirror and tell yourself, I did what I wanted to do as a nurse when I had these great ideas about how I was going to help people all these years ago. I lived up to that expectation I set for myself. Nobody's going to be perfect, y'all. I get it. We are so hard on ourselves. But the reason I'm sharing these things with y'all, these top 5 things that nurses should know, is because I have seen an anemic trend in the teaching, not only of the heart of our new nurses, but the ethics. We have to go into the care of our patients with a strong moral compass, because I'm here to tell y'all, you know it, especially if you work in ER and trauma and a pre-hospital and psych. Like, can we go right down the list? You know that we are regularly buffeted with people's problems and frankly, bioethical considerations that most people who don't work this, they have no idea. They can't comprehend it. But it's our job to be able to grapple with these things. And that's one of the reasons why I'm sharing this with y'all, because I got pieces and parts of this before I became a nurse, but this has really become prescient on me in the past few years as I have seen the steady degradation in the quality of what our nurses are able to do. Not the quality of the nurses per se. People will generally rise to the leadership and the expectation that's been set for them. But unfortunately, nursing has been peddled now as a way to get out of debt, to make money, and blah, blah, blah. And a lot of the nursing schools are popping up because, frankly, it's a financial decision rather than a decision based on character in many cases. Not all. Please don't misunderstand. I'm very grateful for the good nursing instructors that I had. I had some terrible ones. I'll be honest. I had some terrible ones that were just frankly toxic human beings that had no business doing it. They hated people, they hated themselves, and they took it out on the kids and the students that were under their care. But that's not a lot of nurses. A lot of nurses really want to do the right thing. And so I'm sharing this with y'all from my heart because I want this next generation of nurses coming up who is not getting the education that the previous ones had. I want y'all to know, and I want y'all to have the benefit of a person X number of years removed. I want you to have the benefit of that experience, but also to know that burnout is not normal. Toxic work environments are not normal, and they're not acceptable. You shouldn't tolerate this. And we should also recognize as well that the history of nursing and the history of the modern, really, medical industrial complex was born out of wartime. Okay? Like, nursing was never meant to be this lifetime of pouring out, and never recharging. Okay? That's new. That's new. Now, Florence Nightingale, Clara Barton, Sally Tompkins with the Confederacy. Everybody talks about Clara Barton with the North, and nobody really talks about Sally Tompkins. But the history of nursing itself really stems from management of terrible circumstances that are usually spawned from war. And so it takes a toll on people. And I want to equip y'all to the best of my ability to be able to withstand those waves that come crashing in. I hope it was helpful for y'all. If you enjoyed the video today, I hope you'll subscribe to me here on YouTube, Patriot Nurse. You can also support me on Patreon and Subscribe Star as well as cryptocurrency. Y'all, this has just been something that's on my heart, and I wanted to share it with you. Tales from the Crypt. What was that, a Nickelodeon show? That's kind of what it reminded me of. Like, maybe I should tell people what I've gone through and give them some life lessons from things. But I hope it was helpful for y'all, for my nurses, healthcare providers, EMTs, paramedics, docs, alternative healthcare providers. I appreciate y'all. And we're going to have to stand firm. And more than just standing firm on our ethics and our principles, we're probably going to have to stand firm in the days to come on what's right and stand against the politicization and the consolidation of power that's happening through the medical industrial complex and the power that's feeding into the state. Our patients deserve better. They deserve an advocate. They don't deserve tattletale secret police. For now, it's Patriot Nurse signing off, and I'll see y'all later.